In this new Ultimate Team series, I make the best team I believe possible, picking players from all eras of NBA history. It isn't just about how talented the teams are, but I'm also trying to build teams that would gel and execute well together. Today, we're looking at the Ultimate Hawks team. Before I get started, here are the rules you need to know. To build each franchise's ultimate team, I will be picking a starting 5, a second unit representing each position, and then 3 additional rotation players at any position I choose. In total, there will be 13 roster spots. It's worth mentioning that I will not simply be building these teams based on how talented each player is, but I'll also be factoring in how well these players would do together as teammates. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting at the point guard position is the 6'1" perimeter shooter, Trey Young. Seeing how he's a modern day player who's still in his mid-20s, you're all familiar with this guy. Trey is usually among the top 10 players in the league in both points and assists per game. As a dual threat, he'll be perfectly suited to run the floor for this all-time talented group. Thanks to his perimeter shooting, he'll be creating plenty of space for his dynamic wing teammates to operate. Starting at the shooting guard spot is a man who was ahead of his time, Pistol Pete Maravich. This 6'5" sharpshooter loved to run the fast break, and with his remarkable highlight-worthy passes, he'll be helping Trey Young find all of the open players on the court. He had a remarkable handle of the basketball and had a lethal pull-up jumper even as far as 3-point range. He made 2 All-Star teams with the Atlanta Hawks, and at his best in 1974, he averaged nearly 28 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, and 1.5 steals on roughly 46% shooting from the field. Starting at small forward is the one they call the human highlight film, Dominique Wilkins. He's most remembered for his insane dunks both in the actual games and in the NBA's dunk contests. But simply put, he was one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. He led the NBA in scoring in 1986, averaging about 30 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 steals on 47% shooting. He was a franchise superstar who would often go head-to-head in solo battles with the best players in the league, like Larry Bird and Michael Jordan, and oftentimes Dominique would come out on top with a better individual performance. With great passers in the starting unit like Trey Young and Pete Maravich, Dominique will be eating well, consistently putting up a highlight show at the rim. Starting at power forward is the 11-time All-Star Bob Pettit. Not only is he arguably the greatest player in franchise history, but Pettit is also one of the greatest power forwards of all time, as he won 2 league MVPs, 2 scoring titles, and an NBA championship, all as a St. Louis Hawk. This 6'9" star will do an excellent job of cleaning up the boards and providing additional low-post scoring. At his individual best in 1959, he averaged a league-leading 29 points, 16 rebounds, and 3 assists on 44% shooting from the field. It's also worth mentioning that he was an NBA All-Star in every single season of his career, so without question, he'll be providing both quality and consistency for this all-time group. Starting at center is the all-time great rim protector, DMB Mutombo. I figured that this starting unit was already overpowered enough with offensively minded players, so down low they'll have one of the greatest defensive players of all time, who built his entire legacy off of denying slashers at the rim. Not only did Mutombo win 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards in Atlanta, but he was also a league-leading rebounder. Specifically, in the 99-2000 season, he averaged 11 points, 14 rebounds, and over 3 blocks on 56% shooting from the field. With great playmakers on the squad, this 7'2" mountain will make a great recipient for all the lob passes coming his way. Now let's look at the second unit. The backup point guard will be the 9-time All-Star Lenny Wilkins. With Trey Young as the starter, the Hawks have a floor general who will often look to score for himself. But if a more traditional pure point guard is ever needed, then Lenny will be a fantastic substitution. He was solid at finding his open teammates, and when he chose to keep it for himself, he was a remarkable finisher around the rim. At his St. Louis best in 1968, he averaged about 20 points, 8 assists, and 5 rebounds on 44% shooting. The backup shooting guard is the NBA Hall of Famer Lou Hudson. Sweet Lou was 6 foot 5 inches tall, and he had a silky smooth jump shot that made him one of the best scorers in the league throughout the 1970s. In the instances where he and Pete Maravich share the floor together, they'll have a tremendous amount of chemistry as they functioned well as teammates in the 1970s. He made 6 All-Star teams, which were all with Atlanta, and at his best in 1973, he averaged 27 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists on 48% shooting. He'll certainly be a guaranteed surge of offense every time he comes in off the bench. The backup small forward is another guy who has no problems getting buckets, ISO Joe Johnson. This 6'7" wing has great fundamentals, and he specialized in creating shots for himself. Thanks to this quality, he was one of the most clutch go-to players in the league in the final few minutes. Honestly, even though he's coming off the bench, I expect Joe Johnson to be out on the court during the final few possessions of close games. He made 6 straight All-Star teams as a Hawk, and his peak year was the 06-07 season where he averaged 25 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists on 47% shooting. The backup power forward is an underrated player from years past, Paul Milsap. This 6'7" force was an NBA All-Star 4 times, and all 4 of those times were as an Atlanta Hawk. He'll definitely be a change of pace whenever he comes in to replace Bob Pettit, as Milsap was fantastic in both pick and pop and pick and roll situations. He was a respected stretch 4 who you should never give too much space on the perimeter. During his years as a Hawk, he usually averaged about 17 points and 8 rebounds on 46% shooting. The backup center is the man known as the chairman of the boards, Moses Malone. By the end of this series, it will be interesting to see just how many different teams Moses Malone is actually on. His best years certainly happened as a 76er and as a Rocket, but he was still massively impactful when he arrived in Atlanta at the age of 33. In his first season as a Hawk, he was an NBA All-Star and averaged 20 points and 12 rebounds on 49% shooting from the field, and he was second in the league overall in offensive rebounds per game, giving his team 4.8 second chance opportunities on a nightly basis. Now let's look at the 3 rotation players. The first is the franchise's all-time leader in steals, Muki Block. Simply put, he was one of the greatest defensive point guards ever, as he made 6 all-defense teams in his career. His nickname was simply the Thief, and for obvious reasons, as he led the league in steals twice, getting as high as 2.7 in 1997. If a nuisance is ever needed who could also score and facilitate, then this man will make a solid substitution. The second rotation player is the 6'4" small forward Cliff Hagen. With the St. Louis Hawks, he was a 5-time All-Star and was a part of the 1958 championship team alongside of Bob Pettit. When he's on the court, he'll certainly be adding a more old-school style, as his go-to shot throughout his career was his reliable hook shot. At his best in 1960, he was averaging about 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists, while hitting over 46% of his shots, which was ridiculously high for a small forward during that era. The last rotation player is the 6'9" center, Al Horford. He's a quality player who made 4 All-Star teams in his time in Atlanta. He'll be a decent scoring option who can help rebound and spread the floor. With bigs ahead of him like DMB Mutombo and Moses Malone, there might not be a tremendous amount of minutes available, but in the few cases where he's called upon, he'll have an immediate impact off the bench. So here's a final look at the complete roster of this Ultimate Hawks team. Looking at this group as a whole, they're tremendously stacked on offense. But with that being said, they're not a very strong team defensively, with very few exceptions like Mutombo and Block. Because of this, I picture this team trying to simply outscore opponents, with both teams well exceeding 120 points just about every night. Do you think this team will make the Ultimate Team playoffs when we eventually run the simulation on NBA 2K? Let me know below. Also, here is my list of honorable mentions. Should any of these players have made the roster instead? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.